What is your embarrassing story of oops wrong room? Had an internship as a nurse. My job in the morning was going around and measuring blood pressure and pulse of basically all the patients on the station. One day I walked into a room and cheerfully said good morning. A group of crying relatives looked at me. The patient died overnight and no one told me. I used to do post-discharge phone calls for all patients that were discharged from med-surg ICU at our hospital. Basically just a friendly follow-up to make sure they didn't have any questions. I called one patient who was fairly young and was only hospitalized for like minor respiratory issues. I asked to speak to the patient and there was a long pause from the person who answered and she said patient just died in her bed at home. Literally never been at more of a loss for words. I think I stammered something stupid and hung up and walked over to my boss and told them I'm never doing these calls again. FCK that. Walking into my boss's office and seeing his wife sucking him off. I am a maintenance tech for a large rental company. Once a month we change air filters for residents and check for other maintenance issues. Not long ago, I was completing this monthly task for one of our complexes. I always knock twice and ring the doorbell, if applicable, and announce myself as maintenance and the task that I mean to complete. I do my spiel at one of the doors and no answer. The resident's car is gone so he must not be here. I unlock the door and knock one last time and announce myself and throw open the door. They're on the couch. Headphones on. Laptop rolling and naked as a jaybird. With the resident's girlfriend, I'm guessing, going to town on herself. I've never seen this person in my life. What a meet and greet. I'm startled and she must have seen the light from outside when the door opened because she spun her head toward me fast enough to break her neck. Looking at each other with total embarrassment. I slowly backed out of the door. Closed and locked it back again. I didn't go back to change the filter that day. I figured we would give that experience a day or so to pass over. Embarrassing. Very. I was in the choir for a funeral of a 6-year-old girl. I was around 12 at the time and went to the same school she attended. We were told beforehand that rehearsal would be in the church's cry room. That was wrong because the cry room was actually the open casket. It was a pretty small room so by the time I realized what was happening I was already halfway inside. I tried to play it off in front of obviously grieving close family by walking up to the casket and paying my respects the best I could. Once I had to sh-tee so bad that I just ran into a toilet and started relieving myself. After I'm done and stepped out of the cubicle, I saw a lady at the basin. She calmly said to me, "You must be in the wrong toilet." I exchanged for a year to Japan, where literally all men's toilets have a blue man and are at the right side, while most women's toilets are signified by a pink woman on the left. On the airport when I came home, I had a long shit. When I got out, there was a queue of at least 10 women who looked at me like I was a perverted scum. Dying inside. I kept a straight face as I exited the women's bathroom. The reason for my blunder was that the holes at the airport had put the women's toilet at the right side with a blue woman on the door. When my husband and I were dating we went to a planetarium show on Mars. We had dinner before and I drank a lot of water. By the end of the show I was bursting. This was at a place my husband worked so I asked where the bathroom was. He said it was up and on the left. I took him very literally. I bolted to the bathroom in record time. As I savoring that feeling of relief. I think. How progressive to have a unisex bathroom with urinals. Once that thought finished I realized I was an idiot. I heard a person come in. I waited until they finished and then left. When I left the men's room, this old lady gave me such a stink eye. Oh well. I didn't pee myself. I didn't accidentally see anyone's privates. I call that a win. Jumped into the wrong car and the driver thought I was hijacking him. A few weeks back I did this on the driver's side. Approached my car in the parking lot. Pressed the unlock button in my pocket. I didn't look to see if the lights flashed. Opened the driver door to hop in and there is a dude sitting in the driver's seat browsing his phone. Turns out, same model car pulled up and parked one car space in front of mine a while after I arrived. Tried to find a bathroom at a house party when I was about 15. Walked in on the host's elder sister and her boyfriend doing it. Have never seen so much panic and anger in someone's face. She came downstairs pretty soon after and had a very heated conversation with her brother in the kitchen. Once she left, he told everyone and had a good laugh about it. Typical little brother, and I felt really bad in case they could hear. But, as I found out from my friend, the room does have a lock on the inside. At the end of the day they were kind of asking for it with around 30 teenagers partying in a house with one bathroom. That was right next to her room. Being a supportive family member who has a couple of gay family members, I ended up going to Pride with them. I got lost from them and I saw a room labeled the dungeon. I thought to myself, hey, that sounds pretty neat. As soon as I walked in the door, it was a room full of TV screens with BDSM gay porn playing in the screen. I instantly did a 180 and walked right out the door like Grandpa Simpson. I was on a safari with my family for a game drive. You wake up super duper early to go and see the animals. Had to get something from another tent. Then returned to mine. Wasn't wearing my contacts yet. And upon returning to my tent, I opened the zipper. I was standing in the doorway and suddenly something moved in my bed. I high-pitched screamed, which was answered by an evenly loud scream of some guy who was equally shocked. Someone was screaming in the doorway of his tent at 5:30 AM. Yeah, it turns out my tent was the next one. Felt sorry for waking him. And very embarrassed. Went grocery shopping. 2 days after moving into my new apartment. Came back. Wondered why the door was unlocked. And let myself in to see the layout slightly different. My downstairs neighbor then poked her head out from the living room and just looked at me. I noped out of there and hastily went up to my own floor. Great introduction though. When I was 11, a girl, was insanely curious about what boys' bathrooms looked like inside. So one day we were at a McDonald's and I opened the door to the boys' toilets instead of the girls', where I started right into the face of a cleaner. For some reason I can't even begin to fathom. I put on my best fake accent and just said, wow. Things sure are different in Canada. I turned around and went back to my seat. Face burning. I'm Australian. In Australia. Was running slightly late to class when at university. So was doing that weird jog walk to get to class. Not stopping, I quickly opened the door to see a full projection screen size image of a woman's vagina with a baby crowning. Complete the painful nails on chalkboard sounds of labor. The lecturer just casually asked, can I help you? As if this was totally normal. And completely wide-eyed I just stammered and asked where the marine vertebrates seminar had moved to. Turns out my marine biology class had switched rooms so the midwifery students could use this classroom with projector to watch their childbirth documentary. But because I was running late I didn't get the memo. I introduced a couple of friends to each other. And I hooked up. Overnight. The girl walked in the bathroom. Confidently and completely naked. Except it was not the bathroom. It was a bedroom. Where the guy's father was asleep. And woke up because of how noisy she was when she entered the room. Both told me the story embarrassed to death. The father was just crashing there before leaving to the airport. A guy, was at a fancy modern cafe. And I had to use the bathroom. The signs for the men's and women's room looked weird. And I couldn't tell which was the men's room. I eventually found out when I had finished. Washed my hands and opened the door to find a woman waiting. This happened to me at a truck stop. While I was using the toilet I noticed this weird metal box attached to the stall wall I'd never seen in a public restroom before. It really sunk in what I'd done when a woman and her daughter came in to use the restroom. I waited until it was empty and scurried out of there. Walking into an apartment room looking for a friend who gave me the wrong directions and sees a 15-year-old jerking off to pictures of Marilyn Monroe. I was a kid and we were at someone's house for dinner. I accidentally opened the wrong door when looking for the bathroom. It was a pitch dark room that smelled really weird. Like hot glue. And an obviously very old lady shrieked incomprehensibly at me. I hadn't even known there was an old woman in the house. Eater. Just realized you said embarrassing. This was more like terrifying. Although I was too embarrassed to tell anyone what happened, so just quietly wallowed in my trauma. I came home early from school one day and walked in on my stepdad f***ing the nanny. The nanny was my cousin. Edit. I was 16. Still remember their terrified faces when they saw me. Both panicking, her crying, him rushing to put his clothes on, and I ran to my room, locked myself in while he begged me to let him in so we can talk. Told my mother that night and they promptly split. Christmas was never the same. Edit. She wasn't my nanny. She was my little brother's nanny. He was at school. More wrong building than wrong room, but whatever. Years ago my boyfriend and I drove 2 hours away to attend his mother's 50th birthday party. His parents live in a tiny town with other tiny towns nearby. He assumed the party was being held at this sort of rec center all-purpose building in tiny town X, so we park and jog up to the door since it's raining. We go in talking and laughing, expecting to join the party, only to find that there is a weirdly somber senior citizen bingo game happening in the main room that this door led into. Turns out his mom's party was actually in tiny town Y, not tiny town X. Not a single person even seemed to notice two young people bursting in on their bingo session. So it wasn't too embarrassing. But still. That day I learned to really question my boyfriend to make sure he's not just assuming he knows where something is. Walking confidently into the wrong toilets multiple times because the symbols were super confusing. Went to an Italian restaurant that had a picture of penne on one door. And a picture of spaghetti, singular, on the other. Spent a minute looking at the doors trying to figure out which was which when a waiter stopped by asking if I needed help. I asked which was the women's toilets. And she said those stupid doors. We're trying to get them changed. So penne was women's because it has a hole. We ladies only have a single hole apparently. And the men's was the spaghetti because ha limp penis. The owner apparently found them hilarious. I've had the reverse happen to me a few times. I go into the men's. See a lady touching up her makeup at the mirror. She freezes. I freeze. I'm like OMG so sorry and back the FCK out ASAP. Then I get back outside and walk towards the ladies thinking it's the correct room now. See the ladies sign and I'm totally confused there. It's not that interesting but this came to mind. I was working in the airport for a while. The setup for the toilets always seemed to be men on the right, women on the left. So I'm rushing in as I have to be somewhere and see a woman washing her hands. I stop for a second and say, "Miss, you're in the wrong toilet." Then I look on the right and there's another woman. Then another comes out from the stall and they were all looking at me. Then it clicked that I shouldn't be there. When I was 13 I went to sing the national anthem with my school choir for a local hockey match. Before the match we were stationed in one of 3 dressing rooms. I was well familiar with the venue and I was confident that if I went to the loo before the match I'd be able to find my way back to the correct room. No dramas. When I came back from the loo I opened the door expecting to see my chwarmats. Instead I got a shocking but glorious complete eye full of an entire team of muscular, sweaty, post-adolescent hockey players. Most of them completely naked. I was equal parts terrified to get in deep shit and also feeling as if I'd won the girl lottery. One of those first days of classes in college. Was quite late. But right into a sign language class. You can make up any kind of facial expression I could have had at that moment. I used to go door to door selling newspaper subscriptions when I was an early teen. One late afternoon I knock on this old lady's door and she assumes I'm her son's best friend coming over for some sort of sleepover. As soon as I ring the bell, she ushers me inside and takes my jacket. Starts rambling on about what the nightly activities will be. Keep in mind I still have my newspapers in my hand. Then her son comes downstairs. We went to the same high school. And just stared at each other in this awkward "WTF are you doing here" sort of trance. I guess his mom caught onto the awkward looks because she stopped talking as well. I said something stupid like, "So you guys want the Gazette?" She just said leave and shut the door. She still has my jacket. Wasn't all that bad. But it's my only wrong room story. Was walking around uni once looking for a particular study room. Having been given vague directions. There were 3 of these study rooms in a row. So I tried the middle room first. Walked in on some theater practice group, all girls, changing. 2 of them had literally just taken their bras off. So I got an eyeful immediately before realizing what was happening and quickly averting my gaze. I froze for a second. Tried to look one of them in the eyes. Failed. Said yeah, not this room then, sorry. To their credit, they seemed completely unfazed. The one I tried to look at in the eyes just smiled and waved it off with an all good. And for all the HRNY redditors out there. Yes. The 2 seconds of true sight yielded glorious results. They were fairly well stacked and beautifully shaped. Came into work. Entered through the front door. And got asked, "How may I help you?" From the counter. Realized I entered the company next to ours while brain AFK. Said, "Sorry. Wrong company," turned around and left. I just started dating my ex. We were 14/15 and the same sex couple. His dad obviously did not approve. Anyways, we used to sneak into his place when his dad had gone to bed so we could share the same bed and cuddle and stuff. His dad was out like a light most of the time so we didn't worry about getting caught. One night I got up to take a whiz because we'd been drinking a bit the night before. I finished in the bathroom and in my drunken haze went into his dad's bedroom and got into bed. Without knowing I had gotten into the wrong bed. I woke up in the morning in that bed with his dad not there. I rushed back into my ex's bedroom because God forbid he ever got the wrong idea that I was sleeping with his dad. My ex wasn't there. He was downstairs having breakfast with his dad and I heard his dad saying along the lines of, "I can't accept that you are with a guy. But for heaven's sake stop drinking because he's ended up in my bed." I felt mortified. We're no longer together but his dad is always polite IA. When I was about 12 years old we moved into an apartment for about 6 months when we were between houses. We had only lived there a short time. When I went home for dinner I rushed into the apartment and made a beeline for the bathroom. It was then I realized I had walked into the wrong apartment. I was so oblivious to my surroundings I had not even noticed the people in the dining room were not my family. Oh god, so many. I work at a hospital. Used to be a CNA on a labor and delivery unit. I walked in on a couple having sex. After the baby was born. Incredible. I wasn't disgusted. I was impressed. I now work in an operating room. I was doing some scut work. Restocking or something. And walked in on a trauma with my headphones on. Bebopping to some awful electronica. It was like a record scratch moment. Everyone looked at me. And I was like, oh. And backed out. Last one was at a party. Pre-hospital. Pre-good internet porn. I was a teenager. And I was looking for a friend. Boy oh boy did I find him. I walked into a room that was playing porn on the TV. And there was at least 4 dudes in there watching and openly masturbating. The kid I was looking for was one of them. I shrieked and hoped out of there super fast. The bathrooms were on the left and right at the end of a T-shaped hallway. I saw the word men on the left. It was only after walking in, noticing the lack of urinals and the ladies staring at me that I realized I had seen the back half of the word women. Double quote. Honest mistake. But seriously. What a bad design choice. I was at my doctor's house, family friend as well. And they were getting ready to go out somewhere with their kids. I go up to say something. Only to walk in while they were in the middle of getting dressed. I just moved into my new apartment during college. After class I was looking forward to a nap and clearly wasn't paying attention. Went a floor past my floor and walked into some random dude's unlocked apartment. He was standing there insanely confused and I slowly backed out apologizing profusely. It wasn't until later that if I had more confidence I probably could have turned that situation around and fulfilled a fantasy that I'm sure many men have IAIA. I pulled in a gas station once and waiting in line for the pump some drunk dude just opened my passenger door. Hurriedly sat in and saying right. Let's go. Comma. And closed the door. Took 3 seconds of eye contact to realize he was in wrong car and then continued to make a quick exit from the car. When I started at university, my first ever lecture was an introduction to business studies. I arrived nice and early and chose to sit in the very middle row of the lecture theater. Suddenly, a bunch of Chinese students burst in and took their seats. I was confused and I didn't see a single face that I recognized. I already knew some people who were going to be taking the course. The lecturer then began the lecture by saying, "Welcome to a 2-hour introduction to ancient Chinese art." I sat through the whole thing. Boringest lecture ever. The Chinese students around me eventually caught on that I was in the wrong lecture and started pissing themselves. I was on the opposite side. I was at a party and a bunch of guys were simping over this one girl, who was pretty cute. Later on in the night I was just chillin' and she was talking to me and she asked me to go look on her friend with me upstairs. So she takes my hand and walks me upstairs. Then she just doesn't go into her friend's room and I'm like, ah, gotcha. She closes the door and locks it. But she really didn't, cause my buddy walked in on us. Good times. When I was a kid, my auntie and 3 cousins were visiting us in our new house. It was only the second time they had been and the first time was only briefly. Anyway, they all practically fell into our house, laughing their heads off. I was like, what are you all laughing at? Turns out they had just all walked into the house next door. They had all took their shoes off because auntie noticed we got new carpets and one of my cousins walked into the living room, up to a girl on her computer and was just like, "Are you wicked lazy's friend?" For her to be like, "Oh no. She lives next door." My auntie and cousins were such a loud bunch. I don't know how they made it past the front door and I thought it was hilarious. My brother and I arrived at my uncle's house at 2:00 AM. We were in town for our grandmother's funeral and my flight was delayed. The GPS was acting a little off, but we recognized the house. 4 cars piled up in the driveway. Basketball hoop. Big windows. Bottom of a hill. Whoops. Wrong house. A very confused and irate woman answered the door. While we're standing there with our suitcases and dumb looks, turns out there was both a 355 Elm Circle and a 355 Elm Circle Drive half a mile apart. Being suburbia, houses built at the same time tends to have very similar architectural styles. Who does that? Oh. My best friend has a horse. I was at the shopping center when I saw her. I snuck up behind her and started moaning like a horse when the poor woman turned around, and that's when I realized it wasn't my Lana but some old woman unknown to me. I almost died of shame. I just laughed and left. I accidentally walked into a women's dressing room at a football club. Yes, I say football because I'm in Europe. I couldn't remember the number of our own dressing room, so I just tried one and whoops. Yes, they were all naked. I was pretty embarrassed. I haven't told anyone to this day. Until now. I accidentally walked into the teacher's lounge, where my substitute teacher for a different class was banging my math teacher. Not only was this awkward, but neither of them were attractive, nor does the man have a large DCK, judging from the few seconds of thrusting I saw before I quietly exited. Not really a room, but a couple years ago my dad went into a porta potty, and my grandfather tried playing a prank on him by shaking the one he was in, but he misjudged and a pregnant Karen came out and lectured him for half an hour about how he could have caused her a miscarriage. I rented out the spare room in my house to a friend. One night I came home really drunk and just wanted to conk out on my bed. As I entered the room I realized I had gone into my friend's room by mistake. It was really embarrassing because I am the owner of the house and should really know where my room is. Luckily my friend wasn't home, otherwise it would have been even more embarrassing. Wrong room. How about wrong car? Numerous times I have come out of store, such a quickie convenience store, and my friend's car or truck will be parked adjacent to a same make and model, and sometimes I'm not paying attention. Put my hand on the latch, then realize, hey, this isn't my ride. WTH. But one time I was not paying attention and got into a car with a little old lady who looked at me and said, Excuse me, but who are you? Lol, I was so embarrassed I felt too tall.